Hi there, Smirk here. A decade-old joke comes back to life through this game I found while perusing the Steam store page one day. I thought it looked interesting in addition to it seemingly being only a short investment of both money and time, so here's a short review. I won't be spoiling the story elements themselves, but I will have to talk about them vaguely to cover my likes and dislikes, so hopefully that doesn't bother you. Today's game is called The Game, stylized in all caps for whatever reason. This game is the only release by the developer Kyeonbu, normally costs 99 cents, and has roughly 30 to 40 minutes of playtime if you play both paths. In this RPG Maker game, you play as either a male or female character, called Theo or Jean, or is it Jian, as their default names, but you can rename them if you'd like. This game starts you off by spotting you in a room with only a singular flower, and when you leave the room, you're told that you lose the game by this character, who you'll learn nothing of value about, and you're given another opportunity to win the game. If you choose correctly, you then choose one of two paths. To the left is Julie's path, which involves turn-based Final Fantasy-like combat against monsters. To the right is Lorena's, which is entirely puzzle-based. At the end of either path is a free ticket, which you need to win the game. This game is linear without any exploration opportunities. Once you complete one of these two paths, you're taken to a post-path section that reiterates the mechanics of the path that you had just taken, and then the game comes to a conclusion. You have the ability to play the game again if you'd like to play the other path, and at the end, you'd get a special conclusion. Overall, this game utilizes itself as a way to introduce some life lessons and alternative perspectives about human behavior. What the game might lack in gameplay, story, and world building attempts to make up for with its teachings of the developer's moral compass, which is at the very least interesting. That's about it for the foundation, so let's talk about what I liked. The thing that I liked the most was that I thought the art direction was pretty appropriate for the game. Visually, the game has some art that I thought looked nice and seemed fitting for the grungy nature of the game. Audibly, most of the tracks were fine, and since the game was so short, they didn't really become a nuisance. There was this one track that seemed unnecessarily upbeat for a rather calm part of the game, though. Secondly, I thought of how some of the gameplay elements were explained in the context of the game were appropriate and seemed clever. The game tries to convince you to look at things as more than what's happening at face value, and I thought that some parts of it were well implemented without being too direct. It wasn't exactly subtle, but the cleverness of how it's implemented in a pretty basic RPG Maker game in summary is what I found enjoyable. That's about all I've got for this section, so let's move on to what I liked a little less. When it comes to some less good things, the game does have some minor translation issues, but I don't actually weigh these against games where English doesn't seem to be the developing team's first language. I just thought it was worth mentioning. Sentences and phrases can be figured out with context, but occasionally these phrases can invoke a little bit of humor when encountered. Another thing that I didn't enjoy too much was something I mentioned earlier. You get a special conclusion for completing both paths. The result of this just ports you to a room where you can talk to the NPCs of the game to learn fun facts about them, like their favorite color or their full name. I struggle to see the value of this since I think it would have been a great opportunity to instead learn more about why this realm exists at all, or further elaborate on the morals the game wants you to pick up on. It just seemed out of place to me. Next up, a recent update between my gameplay from several days ago and today seems to have broken the game launch, as Steam can no longer find the executable at the path it was expecting. There isn't any information in the update history, so I'm not sure what the developer fixed or changed, and I completed both paths again with Lorena's being first and didn't notice any significant changes. You can still launch the game yourself by browsing to local files if you want, but that's a bit inconvenient for someone who might want to experience the game without knowing better, since reinstalling the game didn't fix this problem for me. The most unfortunate thing about this game is actually what happens in the post-path phase. When you complete either Julie or Lorena's path, you're introduced to the post-path section where you'll need to reiterate the skills you have acquired again to complete the game. When you play these sections, you'll begin to notice they contain some background for the character of the other path. So if you pick Julie's path, you'll learn some aspects of Lorena's character in Julie's post-path section. The problem here is that when you're going through your second playthrough on an alternative path, you skip the gameplay of the post-path section and go straight to the exit, so you don't actually learn anything about the other character. This might be intentional, since this game really leans in on the important decision aspect when you only really make one impactful decision the whole game, which is which path you decide to go down. This possibility is undermined a bit due to how easy it is to overcome this roadblock, because you can just play the game a third time, as it forgets that you've played it before once you've completed both paths. If it was intentional, there could have been more blockers put into effect to prevent you from experiencing the post-path gameplay of the one you opted not to choose. This is doubly unfortunate because I actually think Lorena's character is really well written, and if I didn't play this game well over 2 times, I wouldn't have thought that way since Julie's post-path seems like it reveals some important traits of Lorena. I think that's enough coverage for now, so let's move on to the recap and rating. To highlight the game's strengths, I thought it had pretty good art direction for the value of the game. In addition, I thought some supporting elements of the gameplay were cleverly explained. To cover the game's weaknesses, the game's special conclusion doesn't contribute anything to the game. A recent update has broken how this game launches from Steam. And lastly, some parts of the gameplay on a second playthrough are skipped, which removes the capability of learning more about both paths' characters equally. With these things considered, I don't think I could recommend the game, and as a numerical score, I'd give it a 4 out of 10. I think the intent is somewhat unique, but there's a good handful of questionable design decisions on top of the game being in a semi-broken state right now. While the game doesn't ask a lot of your money or time, I unfortunately don't find myself enlightened by its teachings or the experience it provided, but I'd love to see another game come from this developer to see how they improve. Alrighty, that's all I've got. Like the video if you liked the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe if you want to see more of my future content. Feel free to slap that bell's thick ass if you want to receive notifications for future videos.